All right. This is Dr. Thompson, United States History, day two of our lecture series of World War II. Picking up from, I think this is around slide 60 or so, Jesse Owens. We know him to be a significant figure in the athletic world. However, he also did something rather important as far as representation was concerned to break down fascist ideas. And and racist ideas, and the Aryan Nation, the Nazi Party, Hitler, and all of those folks who sided with him thought that people who weren't blonde or blue eyed was you know inferior, and what he was able to do at the 1936 Olympics in Berlin kind of shattered those ideas. Um, so we picking up with Holocaust basically, and we'll probably be finishing with it in today. We know that to be the murder of 11 million people across Europe, more than half of whom were Jews. And Jews were targeted for this particular war largely because Hitler blamed them for losing World War One, which they believe, kind of, spiraled their little Reich down, or the Second Reich, or whatever called it. Um, and Hitler was supposed to be bringing back the Third Reich, or the Third German Empire. So Jews lose their rights with the Nuremberg laws, so their laws were stripped of them, and they lost their citizenship, their jobs, and their property. Um, the Night of Broken Glass, you should have watched in the video, that went into greater detail about how it actually started, but it was in response to an event, and it happened November 9th through the 10th of 1938. Nazi stormtroopers and Nazi police attacked Jewish homes, businesses, synagogues, or Jewish place of worship, and across Germany, over 100 Jews were killed, hundreds more were injured, 30,000 Jews were. Uh, and so we're talking about the fled of some Jews from that region of the world. Brings into the picture the plight of the St. Louis video you should have watched today as well. Many American Jews feared, many Americans feared that Jews would take jobs away from normal Americans or Native Americans, and so this is an of what happened to some of those Jews on this sea liner, ocean sea liner, holding almost 1,000 Jews. They passed Miami in 1939, but the Jews was rejected entry into the United States, to say the very least. And the ship returned to Europe. More than half of them were later killed during the Holocaust, which leads to the final solution. Hitler, the world and Europe of the Jewish population, which that is the answer to your all's bell ringers today. A policy of genocide that involved the deliberate and systematic killing of the Jewish population. Um, and so Hitler's hatred went beyond Jews. This list included Gypsies, Slavs, Jehovah's Witnesses, blacks, Asian, Chinese, homosexual, handicapped, mentally ill, and mentally deficient. Jewish ghettos in Poland, Jews were also ordered into dismal, overcrowded communities called ghettos in various Polish cities. And in these cities, there were German factories where they were forced to work. They were transferred to concentration camps or labor camps deep within Poland via train. Again, the final stage of this final solution was the death chambers, the gas. Some pictures, yet pictures that need to be shown in order to understand the atrocity, um, the length to which they went to destroy humans, people with lives, people with loved ones, people with families, just like me and you. Uh, and it's important that we understand that some people hatred goes deep, but we combat that hatred with love and respect. Um, so I think I began ending my lecture yesterday with these kind of images of, restraint and rebellion against this. There were some. Ooh, so so Walter. Yeah, I kind of as well already. And went over that Leon Bass, black World War II hero that liberated the first set of Jews from the Buchenwald concentration camp. Born in Philadelphia, served in a volunteer unit in Alabama and in Florida, and was involved in the Battle of the Bulge. Um, Milton S.J. Wright. He's known as the one of the only black people to actually had a conversation with Adolf Hitler, to which Hitler kind of compared. He pitied African Americans much less of actually trying to say anything that was divisive about African Americans. One of his views, as I went over yesterday, don't he basically said to the guy that he was speaking to, don't you think that your people are destined to perpetually be slaves of one kind or another? And yes, your people are a hopeless lot. I don't hate them. I pity the poor devils. And he, though some historians think that Hitler's word choice, or at least he wasn't the most academic. But I think when he was prepared with people that was around him, he knew what words to use and how to use them to, kind of much less talk bad about America. I mean, black Americans, but to talk about the entire America and its hypocrisy during this time period, that is. And so I think it's important that we remember these notions that he would say when we moved to the civil rights movement, when African Americans would actually not be pitied. They weren't pitied at this time. They weren't pitied before this time, or not pitiful rather before this time or after this time. But and of course in this class, that I've shown you numerous amount of times to which African Americans would go about their way to show that they were not something to be pitied on, but something to be respected, as many other minorities in America. So starting at the other section that we began yesterday, we're moving closer to being involved in this war. We use something called cash and carry provision that allowed nations to buy guns from the United States. Initially, we weren't selling any guns to any nations that were in war because we wanted to stay out. But as our allies were further involved, we became further involved. The Axis threat rises. Britain gets United States support. Remember the Axis powers. That's now the new enemy name. And so the Axis were Germany, Italy, and Japan. And the reason why U.S. is not in it just yet. Well, again, before I even go that far, FDR ran 4 and 1 a president in third term, meaning that he didn't just serve 4 years. He didn't just serve 8 years. He served 12. And then he would, well, I'll wait too far. But yeah, so we established the Lend Lease Act, or Lend Lease Plan anyway, so where we're now able to lend, money and guns, not just guns, but or at least not just sell them, but now we are actually lending them out to nations whose defense was vital to America, because we knew that it would be any moment in time to where that would be on us. So United States began to support Joseph Stalin in the USSR largely because Hitler lied about and then eventually did attack, um, you know, and went against their non-aggression pact. Well, so he sent, the German U-boats, and the United States was forced to retaliate if they hit any of Stalin's or U.S. Ships that were transporting goods to. And so the Atlantic Charter is established late in 1941. The Prime Minister of Great Britain, Winston Churchill, secretly met to agree, and they met on a boat. Rather, they didn't meet in a central location. This gave us the groundwork for what would become the United Nations, where 26 nations agreed on what to do after the war if they could end the war. Japan attacks the United States at the Pearl Harbor Naval Base on December 7th, 1941. This single event is what pushed or forced the United States into World War II. Just as any nation, just as anybody, you ain't gonna just let any one person, single you out and and push you down. So, patriotically, I tell you that this was the moment that America was like, all right, buckle up, we ready to fight. And there was no time. Again, you got to understand that from the difference between World War II and World War One is that in World War One, America had time. America spent about a solid 2 years preparing itself to join the war for only be over there for almost less than a year, to be in Europe less than a year. But when we were attacked for Pearl Harbor, we were not prepared. In 1941, we was giving guns away. But we didn't have armies ready and we navy ready, and was the economy was prepared to build and all of that stuff. So we had the experience with it just some 20 years prior to this point. But we definitely were not ready. Like we weren't ready. Like that kept. So Pearl Harbor happens. They bomb. And the attack kills 2,403 and wounds 1,178. United States declares war. Though this stuff is underlined, it's not green, so remember you do not have to write it. The surprise raid on Pearl Harbor by 180 Japanese planes sank or damaged 21 ships and 300 planes. The losses constituted more than the United States Navy had suffered in all of World War One. The next day, FDR addressed Congress. Yesterday, December 7th, 1941, is a date which will live in infamy. As we watch the video either tomorrow on this event or the next event, or at least on Monday, you will probably see that how he said it, and it's one of those phrases that by U.S. presidents that kind of go down in history. The United States declared war on Japan, and 3 days later, they declared it on Germany and Italy because they knew they were allies. So it was like we about to, here we go. So what were people doing, and how were America, beginning to put itself together to fight? We got to start with the women. Women's Auxiliary Army Corps. Army Chief of Staff General George Marshall. That name may not mean anything right now. Again, I'm not a teacher that teaches a whole lot about military people and the strategies to which they used and all of that. But actually, not now, not this war, but when we get to Korea, his name will come up. And so just kind of keep him in the back of your mental Rolodex. But for now, under this program, the women worked in non combat roles such as nurses, ambulance drivers, radio operators, and pilots. So, as you just know now, if women working, everybody else is working. That's just been a common trend in United States history, even as we look at the American economy today. When women are not hired at the same rates as men, typically the economy isn't doing its best. But when women are hired, everyone else is. So therefore, the economy generally does. Christina Starbuck, she was a spy of Jewish heritage and went by the name of Christine Granville. I thought this was pretty cool. She worked for the British and the French and the Polish. She was the Bond girls or James Bond. I don't know if any of you all ever like seen any of those movies or heard of any of those movies. The girls in those films, they're like the side. I don't want to say side chick, but the chick that usually has like the role of, okay, I'm the female version. I fight. I do all of these things or whatever. And James Bond generally has to report to her to get information. They have an on-off relationship or whatever. It's based on her. She undertook many successful missions and using her language skills, speaking all of these languages, powers of persuasion, to which I won't say what she used to persuade the people, but I think you can use your imagination and look at the James Bond films to understand what she used to persuade people to get information out of them. And her sheer courage to save countless lives is what made her successful. She also was one of Britain's longest serving female agents. Um, and so Rosie the Riveter. I'm sure you've seen these pictures before in other classes. You might have learned about her. It's just really based on a real woman. Of many of the things that I have time to teach about, I think I'll show you videos on her just for the sake of the understanding and gender equality. But she was a propaganda. It was image to encourage women to take factory jobs in the defense industry. Worked on planes, missiles, guns, boats. She did it all. You've seen the image before if you've seen that image that I just showed you of Beyond. Norma Jean Mortison. You may know her actually as Marilyn Monroe. She worked in the defense industry making airplanes. She was orphaned as a child. To give you a little background information on her, is said to have been a double agent for the KGB. Again, that KGB phrase may not be that important now, but it'll be important later on when we begin talking about, uh, you know, the Cold War in the next unit. So yeah, she was, which is the Russian Secret Service. She also would have said have been a communist. Keep this in mind for when we talk about the Cold War and JFK, or Kennedy anyway in his presidency later on. But for and we talk about the another Red Scare and things like that and what they did to Americans during that time period. Remember, she was an actress, so to be accused of being a communist was something that's going to be more relevant later than it is. Mobilization of scientists. Get the title. I remember telling you all yesterday, or at least before I left the classroom when we were in person and stuff. I was telling you that during this time period of World War II, science advanced a great deal. And either to weaponize it, to do experiments, or to save lives. So in 1941, FDR, in retaliation to what Germany was doing with their science, or the Nazis were doing with their scientists, he created the Office of Scientific Research and Development, the OSRD, to bring scientists into the war effort. Their focus was on radar and sonar to locate submarines. Also, the scientists worked on penicillin and pesticides like DDT. Um, the SS Gulf America. Get it's green, so you get the title and what's green is an American steam tanker. German U-boat sunk her in Jacksonville, Florida in 1942. 5 men were killed from the torpedo blast. 14 men drowned. And the reason why I kind of snickered, not at making light of the deaths, but many Americans don't know that some World War II actually was fought on American coastlines. It didn't happen on American soil. America got very, very, very close to actually fighting a war in America, like extremely close. And they sunk our ship, one of our ships. We were able to retaliate and get there, and they wasn't able to make it into our coastline. Um, and so yeah, we defended ourselves and won, but they took one of our ships, and it was a close call to say the. The Manhattan Project, get the title, it was green. This is the most important achievement of the OSRD, and it was the secret development of the atomic bomb. Einstein wrote to FDR warning him that the Germans were attempting to develop such a weapon. The code for this described American effort to build the bomb was called the Manhattan Project. So, to give you a little back information, Manhattan, New York, that's where the scientists had met and agreed to do these underground experiments and X, Y, Z. But they actually went to other areas of Hawaii, and even Australia to actually do the experiments on the bombs. And so that leads me to SpongeBob SquarePants. Most people don't know that the show is based on actual some actual science. SpongeBob SquarePants has bizarre characters. SpongeBob is a talking, as you already know, square sea sponge who lives in a pineapple, has a meowing pet snail, and works in a restaurant owned by a crab. It all takes place on the seafloor beneath the Bikini Atoll, a site of underwater atomic tests back in 1940s. What if they're mutants caused by the nuclear test? Now, there's truth behind this, and I like to throw in some fun facts whenever I can, especially around times to which I'm closing the lecture. But pretty much, what you should know is that the creator of SpongeBob was, as far as the cartoon, the not the particular animation, but just the drawings, was a marine biologist, and he studied the Bikini Atoll or Bikini Bottom. That's what that translates to. the bottom of the sea. And he studied the plant life and the animal life in that particular region in Hawaii. And basically, he saw some mutated animals as they were working with the Manhattan Project. And he based these doodles and his drawings on what he saw. And that's how we ended up with the characters of his name was Stephen Hellenberg, and he's out of Orange County Marine Institute. Perhaps this is why he knows about the bikini, or Coconut Place, the Bikini Bottom, a site at the Pacific where the United States tested 23 nuclear bombs. The inhabitants of Bikini Bottom are mutants because of the nuclear radiation. All right, so we'll do like two more slides. I don't want to do as long as the lecture as I did yesterday. We'll do about two more slides, and that's where we'll end as we talk about how America was beginning to prepare as it was involved already or thrown into World War II. So, War Production Board, it's not the first time we kind of talked about the WPBB. We talked about them slightly during World War One. To ensure the troops had ample resources, FDR created the WPB. The WPB decided which companies would convert to wartime production and how to best allocate raw materials to those. So we had collection drives. We'll talk about that in more detail on tomorrow. And then I think this is a safe space to end the Battle of Stalingrad. You can get the title and get the two bullets. This battle was the turning point. It happened in Russia, where America and Russia was able to defeat Germany in Russia as Russia had invaded. But we'll pick up from here on tomorrow. So again, your classwork is in Canvas. You should be able to see it. Today is just the bell ringer 3 videos. Have a great day. Learn something.